Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 1000 Gurus. Please welcome my guest and my mother, Marie Potts. Yay, so
Thank
exciting.
you.
Thanks for being here, Mom. This is a special, almost unexpected episode because we are actually planning to go visit family in East Coast tomorrow, right? Friday through Sunday ish. Visit family because a lot of your family's over there. And so she was going to fly down so we can fly together. But I was like, hey, Mom, why don't you just come on the podcast since we have the whole day together? So she booked an earlier flight so that she can come down, we can hang out. And so now she's here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I was prefacing this to Solomon too. I was like, I think the only people who listen to every single episode is you and Solomon. So, so in this room we have all the listeners of 1000 Gurus. So yeah, it's gonna be super fun.
I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, cool. So let's go into how I know you. So I think you were the first person I met in life. I don't remember it obviously, but I assume you're the first person I met. And then yeah, you're my mom, so I that I don't know what else to say. I lived with you for the first 18 years of my life, and yeah, now I'm here and you're in NorCal. Um, I don't know if people know this, but like most of my immediate family, all of my immediate family is in NorCal. I'm the only one down here, so it's nice that I come up to visit the Bay Area, Milpitas, Fremont. Like let's say on average 3 to 4 times a year. So I'll see you and Dad, my sister, my two brothers, but I don't really see my friends because it's like just for the weekend. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But then you've been coming down a few times, which I appreciate. So like my mom can I can show her all my stomping grounds around here and we can eat food and stuff like that. So yeah, any clarifications, anything? What are you up to? What are you up to nowadays?
Just I always look forward to, visiting my kids, of course. And I always look forward to coming out here to visit you, even if it's, just overnight. Um I feel like you have to. I mean, time goes. I mean, we talked about this, but time flies,
Mm,
and as you get older, you're going to notice that too. So, I think my priorities, especially, is you know to see my kids, and since you guys are all in different locations,
mhm.
I have to go to different locations.
Yeah, that was planned out. We're like, hey, when we grow up, let's all spread out so then we can make things more difficult for you. Um, I was gonna ask, so as an avid listener of 1000 Gurus, what draws you to our show? Why do you like our show? Why do you listen to it?
Well, it really. I mean, I'm sure the time that goes into this. I mean, I'm I'm your mother, but
What?
I'm just completely amazed at like what you do and for you listening to other people, and I learned a lot from just just listening to them.
Mhm.
I hear different things, and you ask very good questions. So I'm very familiar with all of those, and I I value the fact that you listen to them, and I also value the fact that they're very transparent
Mm,
and very personal. There are a lot of personal things that they mention on the show, and that can affect other people and listeners out there in your audience.
mhm.
So I think it's a great thing that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm grateful to have a lot of great guests on the show with a lot of good experience and the generosity of the spirit of wanting to share that with other people, especially on my platform. It's not like I'm a huge platform and it's not like it's blown up or anything. So them coming out here, I always appreciate that. Yeah, I guess, and to touch base on, if you guys have listened to any episode, usually you'll hear at the end, it's like we end with gratitude. Shout out to my mom. So what I mean by that, if you don't, if it's not already apparent, is growing up, my mom would always say like, things can be tough or things are tough, but then it's focus. What you focus on is like more important. Meaning, there's even if you my siblings and I or my sister and I would complain about stuff, right, as kids do. And my mom, I always remember my mom being like, well, like you have to focus on like what you're grateful for because obviously like things can go wrong and things are bad, but it's like if you focus on what you're grateful for, you'll always have enough. And I think you have more than you have. But if you're always focused on the negatives, you're obviously going to complain. So that's why I always like to end the show with gratitude because I feel like that's one of the most important things you can do. It's one of the most powerful feelings, emotions, mindsets to have is when you're grateful, it's like you have a lot. You already have abundance. And I think that's why I like to end with that. is like no matter what our discussion is, it's good that we reframe it to see what's really important for us as individuals and for my guests. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And I think I've also mentioned that to my siblings when you're listening to people because they want to vent or they want someone just to listen to them, And sometimes when you don't have anything or maybe you can't think of, it's always good and it's always the best thing. And I've always turned to, well, what do you have to be grateful for? Like your children are healthy, you're healthy. I mean, that's got to be there at the top of the list, right? So we can always find something to be grateful, and that'll make us feel better too.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those Tony Robbins things too, where it's like the gratitude is like the most strong, like the strongest emotion or mindset that you can have, and it roots you in the present rather than too much future anxiety, too much past depression. If you're like grateful for the moment, it's like one of the strongest emotions you can state you can put yourself in. One thing I was thinking about a while ago was this idea. Well, we'll talk about family and parenting in a bit. That's one of our topics, but is when you do a lot of those reflections, I've done these reflections over the years. It's like, okay, what are the main things that I've gotten from my parents, right? You and dad. And I think it's similar across the board. Like both of you guys are very uh grateful people, but also very generous people. I think that's one of the things that I would label or kind of what I got from my childhood is like growing up, we didn't have a lot. We didn't really come from a lot of like money and like I guess wealth and privilege and status and all that stuff, right? Like mostly, we got by and whatnot. But what I always remember is that both you and dad were always very generous people, even when I was a kid, beyond what I felt like was necessary. I talked about this in one of my other episodes, but it's like if we barely have enough, why are we being generous to other people? And so that always stood out to me. Like you and dad both did that. It's like you're always generous, giving to other people, and even beyond what you think is what I thought was necessary. But I think the now what I've learned and appreciated is that that has like an ROI beyond like just the money and the relationships. But I think if you have a generosity of spirit, that fills you up in more different ways than just like the money aspect of it. And I think if you approach life in the universe with that generosity, I feel like you have a higher quality of life. So that's one thing that I took from, you and dad.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Cool. Anything else that you're up to that you want to touch on before we get into regular topics?
Well, I do want to say one thing about before we leave that topic.
Yeah.
What you're saying about generosity is that, and you probably heard this from like other people also. You don't have to. We always have to remember that we don't have to be rich to give to to other people. Even if you are barely getting by, you can always help someone or give a little bit of something. You don't have to be
Yeah.
so rich before you say, okay, then I can give. But
Yeah.
I think that's
I agree. Generosity is a mindset. It's not a number in your bank account, right? And we'll talk about that generosity too, because my mom practices what she preaches when she does a lot of like giving and like animal advocacy is something that we're going to talk about. All right, so we'll go into the first topic: origin story, main influences, career trajectory, all this other stuff, just to get out of the way. So, mom, where did you grow up?
so I grew up well in NorCal, more specifically in Vallejo,
Vallejo.
and
Yeah.
then
Oh, isn't that where I was born? No, Fairfield.
Fairfield, which
Fairfield.
is
Yeah.
right next to Vallejo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And then we moved to the East Bay, Milpitas and Fremont, and then that's where you guys went to um, junior high and high school eventually.
Mm,
And I'm still there in Fremont where you come to visit.
nice. And this is a very broad, general question, but what were like the main influences you had in your life growing up, and maybe connecting that, like what was your career slash life trajectory growing up?
Mhm. Can you repeat that and
Yeah.
break it down?
I guess if you were to sum up, well, okay, so my mom is a young 29 years old and I'm 34, so I don't know how that math works. But even though she's young, she's also had a long life. And so looking back at that, it's like, what do you think were the biggest influences that shaped you to who you are today? Maybe that's an easier question.
I would have to say early in my life, probably my parents, of course. I feel like they're always your first line or your first influence.
Mhm.
Um, My parents, and then I think just, you know, being a young parent and being married early,
Mhm.
and that all of that is a big influence and a part of my life after that.
Mm.
Um,
How would you describe your parents? And then my second question is, how young did you have kids?
my my parents,
Yeah.
I well, did you have like a specific thing about my
More just
parents,
like, I
like
mean,
how
I
old
know
they
your
are?
parents, but like,
Like,
but for the audience, could you color like paint a picture for what they were like so that we can see how maybe informs who you are?
so I they were very more of the traditional, but then that's why I'm asking, because
Mm.
traditional can
Mean a
mean,
lot of different things.
yeah, to different, you
Hmm.
know, different people, even different cultures. So, um, well, I will say for one thing, my parents were very strict.
Mm.
Um, and one thing that I do really respect about them is that um, they always try to do what is right and what they're supposed to, and how they're supposed to raise their children, right? Because there are parents who just don't. And um, what I'll say is that I think that parents always, in general, try to do what's best from what they know,
Mm.
right? And I think my parents were that way. Though we also have to remember, but that parents are human. Like when you grow up, and you're like, oh, my parents are human too,
Mm.
so they make
Mm.
mistakes. But I truly believe that they did their best, and they always tried to do what they thought was right.
Mm. Yeah. I guess we're getting into that topic of parenting too, but so it kind of leads into the next question, which was like, how young were you when you got married, and then when you had kids? Because I mean, it's pretty young since you're 29 and I'm 34, so it must have been young.
Well, I was so young because I was actually married before I was 18, so
Mm.
before I became an adult. So I was
Mm.
actually emancipated, just
Mm.
what they call an emancipated
Yeah, yeah.
minor. Yeah. And then shortly after that had you guys.
So, so how old were you?
So, but
She was -4. She was
negative four.
-5 when she had me. Yeah, I guess okay. I was My main question is because like I think the whole parenting thing kind of informs like I know the lore from what you've told me, right? Is that I think growing up, you had difficult relationships with your parents, and then you wanted to move out, and you got married, and then eventually you had us. But there was also, from my understanding, like you and your siblings. My mom's the oldest of five,
Mhm.
and so like yeah, tough family situation, but then, everyone kind of wanted to get out of the house sooner than later. And then a lot of my cousins are also like, or my aunts had like kids when they were younger too. Cause
Mhm.
I imagine when I was like, man, if when I was in my early 20s, I couldn't imagine having kids. Right. Or I guess I could, but I'm like, this would be really harder than if like for today. Right. Like I think I'm more financially and emotionally prepared to have kids now. But if I was in my early 20s, like, or 18 or whatever the age, I'd be like, dang, that's tough. And to your point again, it's also like we do the best we can with like what we know, and we all make mistakes. So I guess that's what I was trying to get at. Is like there's a lot of different lore there, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And we also live in different times,
Mhm.
which that's a factor too. Um, but I mean, there are a lot of things involved with that. When you're a kid or that young, you don't really know the best thing, but your parents, they want the best for you, and they try their best for you. But there's not like a manual to parenting. So, but I truly believe, and I'm very thankful to my parents that they did try to do their best based on what they think how they should raise their kids.
Mhm.
So I really, really respect that.
See, gratitude. She's just every answer is just
No,
I'm
it's true though.
thankful. So this is what I grew up on. So yeah, like obviously my mom was like a young parent. My sister's 2 years older than me, and so I remember growing up a lot. People would be like, oh, your little sister and your little brother," referring to me and my sister, right? Because my mom like looked so young, and then we were like, I was like 11. My sister was like 13, and like people would mistaken her for like our older sister. And so she would get that, and she'd be like, "Oh," and she would tell us about this. I'm like, "Okay, mom, you're so young." Like, so it was a compliment, right?
Thank you. Yeah, but I did have you guys when I was young.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I guess, well, since we're on parenting, that's kind of like the next topic. And I know we want to talk about like traditional versus new parenting, or what kind of parents like I would want to be, or the role of family. But I guess what this is a big question, but what was your experience like? You have three kids now, my sister, myself, and then my younger brother, who is a third year, finishing his third year in college in Hawaii,
Mhm.
right? Um, my question as an audience member would be like, what was that experience like? What were some of the challenges, and what were some of the lessons learned? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on those.
Um.
Super easy. It all turned out well. We're not in jail. None of us have kids.
Well, I mean, one thing I can say is I'm blessed. Because I even growing up and discussing, like with other parents, parents always compare this and that. But if we do compare, and that's happened, and I've always sometimes I'd be like, well, I don't have like those problems, and they're like really um problems like on both ends of the spectrum, right? Like, from really bad to really good. But I've always been so lucky and blessed that I never had to, um, really go through some of the experiences that I've heard other people,
Mm,
had. So, it's not easy, but I don't think it was you know, that it's been as tough as some other,
mm.
that I've heard. Yeah.
So you're grateful.
Well, well, yes. In fact, I think I mentioned this to you guys. That I wish, and sometimes people were like, "What you would want to have more kids?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, I more specifically, I would wanted to have two of you,
Here it
two
comes.
of your sister, and two of your brother. So I've always wanted twins.
She always
I
wanted
wouldn't have
twins.
wanted more. Yeah.
My brother always jokes because my mom always mentions that she wanted twins and wants twin grandkids, and it's like that's not up to us. That's up to genetics, and we're not really stacked for that genetic lineup since none of us are twins. But my brother always jokes. He's like, "What, mom? Am I not good enough for you? You need two of me? Like, am I not enough?"
So
My
I've
brother says he
always
mirrors me.
being a young parent, though, you would think that and also I think that's why I brought up that I'm the oldest of five,
Yeah.
is usually when people have to take care of their siblings and things, usually I've heard them say, "Oh, I don't want kids for a while," and it's hard. Yeah, it was very tough because I was I took care of my siblings. My parents were working and what have you. I think that's what I should do anyways as the older
Mhm.
sister. And but after after I got older, I still wanted to. I wasn't the one who said, "Oh, I don't want any kids for now."
Mm.
I always wanted kids. I don't know, you know why, but I've always wanted kids, even young, even when I was, you know, even to be a young parent.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I didn't. I guess obviously, everything else didn't come first. It was having kids first.
Yeah. So then you helped raise your siblings, and then you're like, you know what? I also want kids too. It's a complete opposite direction of what someone might want to do. Okay, so were there any notable like challenges? This is a very weird subjective question, but like, were there, what were the biggest challenges, I guess, of being a young parent? Because I think, again, for the sake of people relating or wanting to hear the story, or if they want to become parents, right? Like, I don't know if you have any things that come to mind of like challenges and or advice for parents. You are the second parent I've had on the show, so this is helpful advice for us non-parents.
I guess it's. I think the challenges were like more financially,
Mm,
unless you're born into wealth, then you have to. That's just one of the things that you have to go through and kind of navigate. You know your way through, and not really knowing the best, like knowing what you know. what I know now and what I knew back then. I think that's the main, that's one of
Your
the biggest
challenge.
challenge.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Any advice for like parents, younger parents, or people who want to become parents, having experienced the last however many years with 3 kids?
Well, um, I don't really know what to say because I think everyone's, you know,
Right.
parenting ways
It's different,
is
right?
different. Um,
Helpful advice, like obviously everyone's situation is different, but words of wisdom.
um, I think for me, I think what I've learned from my parents, and but again, like I said, we parents always just want to try to do their best, right? But I think my advice is don't be over or don't be so strict with your kids.
Mm,
Listen to them more, although be firm, but listen to them and don't be so strict.
mm.
Um, my opinion about that is that being too strict will, you know,
Make them want to leave the house and get married early and have 3 kids and then end up on one of the kids' podcasts. Makes sense.
You're so
Thanks,
funny.
grandparents. All right. Well, I guess last thing on this is like, who is your favorite kid, and what would you give?
No,
What grades? What
no.
score would you give us out of
That
100?
that was not on the.
She always says, "I don't
I
have a
have
favorite,
no.
so I love all my kids equally." But
Yes.
I'm pretty sure she has a favorite,
No, I
and
have no. That's
she,
not possible
yeah,
because.
he's sitting right here. That's the favorite.
Well, that's not possible. People who say that. I mean, I don't know. I think there are parents who have
Mm,
favorites because I've observed
yeah,
that,
yeah,
but I can't. It's not possible.
yeah.
For me. That's really what I think.
Solomon's nodding. Solomon, do you have a favorite child?
No, but my sister does.
Okay.
So there are parents who have favorite
He's
children.
like, yeah, I know some.
Really?
Yeah.
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 No, I mean, I subscribe to that too. Like, I know my mom said that growing up, I don't have a favorite, and like, I feel like that's like the most healthy thing you can mindset you can have, because obviously some parents feel like they do have favorites and all this, but that's so toxic because it's like, yeah, just
I
accept
can't.
who you
Yeah,
are.
I can't
Can't
imagine
imagine.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
would you give us? Okay, if were to give us a score from 0 to 100,
score
yeah, what's Ati's score? What would my score be? What's Jacob's score?
all 300. That's
Boo!
to me.
Three first place trophies. Boo!
No, that's not. That's, that question
Okay,
wasn't in the.
okay,
Um,
but which child brought you onto a podcast? Maybe that's the tiebreaker.
there's still no favorites.
Okay, which one was the easiest to raise? And then consequently, who was the most difficult?
there, I I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, who asks for the most Venmo requests or money? Who asks for the least amount of money?
Well, okay, there is. I know I thought about this before, but you going to when you're in college, I don't ever remember you asking for money.
Damn straight.
That that's definitely a fact. Okay.
Yes, I'll take it. I just needed something on video that proves that I'm the superior child.
No, but you're not the superior child.
But in terms of financial costs, I don't really ask for anything.
But I do have to give you that. Like you put yourself through college and
Mm.
everything, and for all these years, I never really thought of that. But you've never asked me for money or to help you with
Mm.
anything. Yeah.
Nice. Cool, nice. At least I have that. I know I prioritize a lot of like independence and obviously financial wise. Like I always wanted to be good with money. But you did help me pay off some of my student loans. I remember that because
But you never asked.
yeah, that's true. My mom's the type of person to just give even if I don't ask. I appreciate it obviously, but I tell the story to some of my friends too because like I had such a little amount of student loan debt after I graduated by design because I was trying to save money. like housing. I became an RA because I wanted to save money. Like I saved like 12 grand because of that. Always kept my expenses low so that when I graduated, I had not significantly less than my friends, and so I lived on my dad's couch for like 8 months and like put like 80% of my paycheck towards my student loans so I can pay it off before the interest kicks in or like the fees and stuff. And so my mom also helped me out with that. So I'll shout out you for that because I was trying to pay it off sooner than later. But yeah, I think yeah, also try not to ask for anything too because that's just kind of like what I wanted to do. Yeah. So I guess by that answer, we can assume that my sister and my brother both asked for money. So
No, that's not what I said.
that's what she said. It's recorded.
No,
I just wanted
I
to get something down.
I just said that you never asked for money going,
Okay,
going.
yes. Okay, true. You have given me money and I appreciate it, but you're right. I don't really remember asking.
Yeah,
So,
you
okay.
haven't.
Cool. I'll take it. Okay. Something else on parenting. You said I don't know if you want to ask what kind of parent I want to be, but I also want to ask like the role of family, traditional versus new parenting, or I don't know, this idea. I like this idea of unconditional love because that's something that you've shown me and it's something that I like to practice and how I kind of perceive my own relationships of how to approach them. But did you have anything on traditional versus new parenting?
I think if we start with unconditional,
Mm,
I think that's a good place to start. um, because the one thing that I always know and I always say, and it is my opinion, is that your kids never ask you to be here.
mm,
So I feel that it's the parents' responsibility, you know, when they bring their kids into this world. And so by that, I feel that, um, you know, what you give them or what you do for them or what even what they need, that's unconditional.
mm,
Because like I said, the thing is that they never asked you to be here. Okay, you brought them into this world. I feel like you're responsible. And some people may not agree with that. And also some people, may say, "Oh, I did this for you."
mm.
That's just kind of like my pet peeve is
Oh,
the
like,
parents
mm,
that, that say, "Well, I did this for you and I paid for this. I paid for that." That's, you know, no, because you brought them into this world. Even if they don't ask for something, but if you've given them something, I feel like you should do that unconditionally. And then at the most, you shouldn't say, "I did this for you when you were a kid,
mm.
and so you should do
Yeah.
this or whatever, or expect something."
Right, right.
Right?
That's one thing that I do appreciate significantly and distinctly about you and dad is that you guys never, I know that other parents are not like this, but you guys never said, "Oh, because I did this, you need to do this," sort of thing. Um, and I feel like you guys setting that example helped me to have my own boundaries with other people as well, because I wasn't raised in this quid pro quo, like, "Oh, because you did this for me," and that's not love. That's conditional love, right? And so approaching relationships the same way, friends and whatnot, is like if you want to give, you give. You don't
Mhm.
give to receive because it's conditional, because it's like reciprocal. And
Yes.
so I think that's what I've really latched onto, especially like where I'm at life now. When I think about relationships, when I think about giving, I think of like if it's reciprocal, if I'm expecting something from someone, that's the unhealthy pattern that I don't want to get into. But I think it's easier for me compared to some of my friends or other people I know because maybe they had that growing up or something. I don't know. But I do appreciate that. Sorry. So conditional versus unconditional love. Anything else on that or parenting styles?
Um, I mean, I think that that's pretty much it. I think if you start from there when you are a parent, then you won't you won't you won't regret anything, or
Mm,
you won't you'll save you, I guess, heartache, because people a lot of parents, I see them, with that expectation, especially when they get older. Like, "Oh, how come,
mm,
my son or my daughter went out on their own? What about, me?"
mm,
That's not how it's supposed to
mm.
be. You chose to have them,
Yeah.
right? So, um, and again, um, parenting is different, from every generation, but it doesn't always mean that you will, or you have to follow, what your parents or their style of parenting.
Mm,
I think you'll think for yourself, and then you'll do also what you think is best, which may be the same or similar, or
mm,
maybe completely different
mm,
from your parents. So I think, but as long as you feel like they don't owe you anything, I think you're better off, regardless of what your parenting style is. I think if you start from there,
mm.
right?
So starting parenting from a lens of, or from a perspective of, I'm not giving to my kids so that they can give back to
Yeah.
me, but starting with like, I'm just here to give and raise my kids to be sensible adults or whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, and starting from there, then you can't really go wrong, or basically just starting point.
I feel that way. Yeah.
Mm, I like that. Okay, now we can switch over to, if you had any other thoughts. Otherwise, we can switch over to animal advocacy, because I know this is a big like passion of yours, a big focus point. Um, you foster or have like a lot of cats. I don't know the number. It was six more. And you're really big into that. You like volunteer work. You do like uh, let's see, like rescue work, volunteer work, and stuff like that. And you're way more knowledgeable than I am, so I'd like to pick your brain on that. Like, how did you get into it? Why is it important to you? Maybe we start there.
Well, I think it just started with one, and when we see a lot of animals, for people who don't have pets or don't um deal with animals all the time. We see animals, here and there, and we hear about them, but then when you actually rescue one or you help one, then that makes a difference. So then when you do that, I think um that's probably what changed a lot of things for me. And then you help that one, which is just, like, sick, is what usually you do when you rescue. And then comes more, and it's hard to turn your back on
Mm,
a sick animal. So that's where it started. So I just started volunteering, and looking into what they do, and then more importantly, like the problems in the community, or problems with this whole animal thing, that people complain about. There's too many animals, of this and that. They don't really do anything except for complain. Like,
mm,
why do we have this problem? Do you just, not do you just not see what's going on, or you just, turn the other way so it doesn't really affect you as much? But when you start helping them, then you really start to see, and you see more of what's going on, and the problems that people complain about.
just like
Like,
being
there's too
involved.
many too many cats, too many
Yeah,
dogs,
yeah, yeah.
and this and that. So I think when you do go into that, then you start to realize really what the problem is and how you can help.
Okay. So my question is, what do you think is something that most people don't know about this idea of animal advocacy? I know specifically if it's like, stray animals, or there's like an animal population problem or something like that, or oversaturation of animals in shelters and whatnot. As a non pet owner, like I don't own any pets, but I know a lot of my friends do. So I'm not really into it. I don't really know like the details of that, but I do know a lot of my friends, a lot of people advocate for like adopt, don't shop, and you go to shelters and you rescue and all that stuff. But then there's also, like, you told me about this before, but like breeding, private breeders, like that's a really bad thing because it's like it contributes to the problem. Also, there's a lot of animals that need homes and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff I didn't know about it, but what do you think is something that people should know, or people you think that people don't know about this problem, this issue?
And that's a really good point that you bring up, because sometimes not all no not everyone tend to, do any harm or turn the other way. So sometimes they just don't know. um because there are a lot of people who love animals, who have, bought them from a breeder, because, oh, this one is so cute,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
wanted
and
a
that's
type of animal.
okay,
Yeah.
right? um but now more than ever, um there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of uh, things that, or that we can tell that breeding is there's so many things. There's just so many. The list can it just goes on and
Things that are
on
bad
about
about it.
breeding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very bad for animals. It's very inhumane. They go even even if you have even throughout history, you've seen the animals that have been bred that have so many physical problems because they breed this dog with that way and this way.
Mm.
They have certain characteristics or physical characteristics that they shouldn't have, but because humans want this type of appearance, you know um, because they want this size dog and to look like this, that it doesn't matter that the dogs are being bred. And so, if like I was telling you earlier, if I had to break that down into three categories, is the worst thing is to buy from a breeder. Okay, and that's a very opinionated statement, and maybe some people disagree with that,
Sure.
but definitely I that's definitely where I stand.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that, then you have to really look more into the information about breeding and see how those animals, um, what goes on with those animals when they breed animals just because certain people want those types of animals.
Mhm.
And also, when you do that, you contribute to the demand for them. And because the demand for them is more, people pay more, and then
Mm.
people make more because they can sell them for more. It's just there's nothing good about it.
Mhm. No, I mean, I agree. It seems like it's a net negative to society, to the whole thing, to have that like breeding problem. It kind of reminds us of like ticket scalpers, right? Like they're just making a problem worse just by because of the demand and supply. But also, it's also this connected to this idea of unconditional versus conditional love because it's like you want an animal specific to your specs, and it's a form of greed. But you also what you won't love another animal who also requires it, who is also already alive. It's kind of like if you imagine breeding children, right? Like, okay, let me breed these two people so I can get this exact looking child,
Believe me,
and then
I've
I'll love
said
it,
that. Yeah.
right? But then people are like, no, I want the specific type of looking animal, and then I will love it. But it's like there's a lot of animals out there, so similar with people, similar with
Yes.
animals. So it seems
Most
like breeding is like a
definitely.
net negative.
Yes. Very.
Yeah.
So I've heard, some of your guests say, adopt, don't shop.
Mhm.
And what they mean by that is we all know, I mean, um, without a doubt that there are way too many animals, in the shelters already. They're just, overfilled all the time, and a lot of animals out there because, animals don't have control of how they
Mhm.
reproduce and how they multiply or anything like that. So that goes into what I wanted to emphasize after that. After um, not only not only addressing the actual problem, because I've heard, and it infuriates me that people say, oh, there are too many cats, there's too many dogs,
Mhm.
and they do this and they do that. I wish they just get out of our community. So I volunteered for like animal hotlines and animal rescues, and even like the shelters, and it's just horrible. And that's a lot of things that people don't know and people don't see, but the thing is, what about addressing why, instead of complaining and just being upset at the animals, why don't we think about
Solution.
why? Yeah,
Why in the
why?
solution? Like, why is this problem here, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, and not just trying to just to get rid of them.
Mm.
That's inhumane also, right?
Yes.
What about trying to see what the problem is? And so the other part of rescuing is that helping communities and helping them and teaching them how to control the population
Mm.
by the spay and neutering, so that they
Mm.
don't have kittens and puppies, right? I mean, instead of trying to, because many animals get euthanized all the time,
Mhm.
and that's very sad. But one step beyond that is teaching like a community themselves to be able to help controlling with the population. That way they don't have, so many cats, and it's not hurting them. It's just helping them because they can't do it
Yeah,
themselves. And
makes
so
sense.
when you teach people to do that, you don't have to be, because you're only one person, or you're only two people, or you're only one group. But if you teach them or somebody else to do that, then they can do and teach somebody else.
Yeah, makes a
So
lot of
just
sense.
just like when you teach somebody, about finance, you know, it's one thing for you to be able to do it, but then for you to teach somebody else is much more
It makes more of an
impactful.
impact. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. It's crazy because as someone again who doesn't really have pets, um, sometimes you'll hear or I'll hear over the years like, oh yeah, we can breed these animals and then we can sell, we can make a lot of money. So it's basically just a financial thing for people, but they don't realize there's a huge ethical problem with that because they're just breeding these live animals just for the sake of economic gain, but they're not seeing the consequences, just like, overpopulation or like a lot of stray animals, and then people complain about it, not do anything about it. So I think, like, I guess to the point is awareness is key, and then teaching other people and advocating and being part of the solution instead of just complaining about the problem. So there's a lot of things that we can all learn more from. So I think I think that's what I got from it. I don't know. Anything else on
That's
animal advocacy?
um I think that's a big I think that's a big part of it, covering that. One is that, you know, instead of just complaining or, being hateful at the animals,
Mm.
think about first what, they have no control over that, and maybe how you can help with that.
Right. Yeah. Good call to action. We were talking about this beforehand too, but it was like the double standards of, I guess, people can make their own decisions in their diet, what they eat, vegetarian, not vegetarian, whatever. And then animals, right? We talked about that. But I was saying how what I learned in sustainability and pollution, overpopulation, stuff like that, a large reason why we have a lot of pollution nowadays is because of our food production system. And a lot of that is focused around meat. And a lot of that is like to produce a pound of, let's say, beef takes so much water and so much resources, so much land, so much grain, all this other stuff. And so, not saying, everyone should become vegetarian, but the natural progression of following the vegetarian arc is that we do have a lot of less waste, a lot less pollution, like a more ethical food production system. And so, there's those places that advocate like meatless Mondays or, just reducing the amount of meat you consume and putting it less on a pedestal. And so I'm an advocate for that. I'm not going to say that I'm going to judge people who eat meat or who don't eat meat, but I think it's something to consider in terms of ethical treatment of animals, because I think most people we were talking about this before, but you're so separated from how you get your food. You just put it in your mouth when it's a burger, but you don't realize that all these cows, chickens, and pigs are kept in these inhumane conditions. They're slaughtered, and then all of that produces a lot of waste, and then it goes into our environment. And then again, it takes a lot of water to create like 1 pound of chicken, and so it contributes to all this problem. But I think if we just like had more awareness, that could be a start to it, figuring out like your diet, what's more sustainable, things like that. I think just awareness and less judgment, I guess, on other people too. I think I'm fine with we can be fine with people's diet choices, but just don't have a double standard in judging someone else on what they eat and then vice versa. And it's like, oh, I'm better than you or something like that. I don't think that's the way to go.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You know what? I appreciate that because of all of that information that you talked about. Because even though, like you said, even though you don't know too much about animals, and maybe somebody else doesn't know too much about what you talked about, like the sustainability and how much waste we produce
Mhm.
by this and that. But all of that, you know, together, and the awareness for that, i think it's um I think it's the best thing, because we are, for one, very disconnected from the food that we eat, even just from burgers and
Mhm.
chicken and things like that, and pork.
As opposed to like, the people who go out and hunt their food and then they eat it sustainably,
Yeah.
right? And they don't overhunt or anything like that, but they use all part of the animal. Like, that stuff like that makes a lot of sense and it's more sustainable. But our food production system is vastly unsustainable and we produce a lot of waste. So like what 40-50% of that food goes to waste anyways. So it's like, what are we wasting all these resources for this system just because people love meat? And it's the people, it's like I don't get the whole putting meat on a pedestal. It's like, okay, yeah, I get you like meat, but it's like, oh, I could never do this because I love this thing so much. And it's like, okay, fine, but maybe do some research into what goes into that meat that you love so much. And
Mhm.
then you can make a more informed decision. That's fine. But it's just those people who I feel like are such avid, like, dead animal eaters. I say that judgmentally. I eat animals, obviously. I eat plenty of beef and pork and stuff like that. But like, I think it's just awareness. Like, you know what you're getting into, you know what you're contributing to, and then you can make a better decision. Okay, maybe I don't eat as much meat, or maybe I don't put on a
Mhm.
pedestal, or maybe I try to eat healthier with more
Yeah.
vegetables, more sustainably. I don't think that can hurt.
Right. Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I appreciate that too because just, just having that awareness, even if you're not, an advocate for animals, but, still at least know what, um, know what's going
Yeah,
into all that process and all
yeah,
the waste
mhm,
too. And like I was telling you earlier, I think in our conversation is that I am guilty of one of those people who will say, "Oh, well, this culture or these people they do this and
mhm,
that," but there are a lot of people out there who even like you said they use the whole animal.
mhm,
They don't just hunt for just for sport, but they
mhm,
use it and they even appreciate the animals. I've read just recently about certain cultures that even appreciate they give thanks to the animal
mhm,
for whatever purpose and for before they eat them and the food and stuff, and people will criticize them without even knowing what is it that they do with animals. But then again, those are the same people who are so disconnected that they don't know that the burger they're eating that they came from the slaughterhouse in worse conditions
mhm.
and by I mean really inhumane conditions. So um
Yeah, if you guys ever, random side tangent, but my senior thesis in college was on sustainability, which is random because it's not like I ever talk about it, but it informs a lot of how I see things, right? But if you ever watch one of those like videos of like slaughterhouses, it'll definitely make you question what you eat. Because I know after I took a class on sustainability and food production, I was vegetarian for like 2 months. I was like, maybe I should. I'm obviously not now, but I don't put meat on a pedestal, and like things like that. But it's just good for awareness, I think, since we're so
Mhm.
disconnected.
And even just to you don't have to just completely be a vegetarian,
Mhm.
but think of other options and maybe other things, or maybe just eating it less
Yeah, eat less and more. Like there are options for more sustainably sourced like food.
hmm
So there's always that. Obviously, there's costs and stuff like that, but just awareness, right? That's all I can really
yeah,
ask for.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else before we go to rapid fire questions? We're about
We're
that
gonna
time.
do rapid fire.
Of course. Yes. Why
That's
not?
not what you
You do
said
not want to do
earlier.
rapid fire questions? Because originally this was gonna be a random show episode, but then we got like main topics focused on like my mom's experience. I'm like, oh yeah, we can just do a standard episode and then I'll chime in too. But I think we can do it. It's be fun. You can pass on any of them. Be like, I don't have anything, and I'll cut it out.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Billboard question: if you could put up a sign for millions of people to see, what would it say?
I have thought about this one.
See,
So
you've
I've
listened to every
gone.
episode. You know
I
the
know. I
questions.
know.
You're the best candidate for this.
So, for that question, I would say, do something for someone else other than yourself. You know, no matter how small or how big. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone say that. So guess number 42 on the show. On the show.
Oh.
Like meaning it was a very original,
Oh.
unique
Okay.
answer. Um, what is one of the hardest challenges you face, and what did you learn from it?
um. Well,
Having an amazing
definitely.
second son or first son that's just so easy to raise.
I think without having to think too much about it, I would say probably when your kids, you know, get older and then they kind of go on their own. Um, but the thing is, I think if you want, I think just with like your brother, because he's the third one, he's the youngest. Um, there are a lot of things that you don't want to, you know, definitely it's hard when you guys don't live close by. So the challenging thing is that, but I know that that's what you guys want, and that's what's best for you at the
Mm,
time. That's what you want because it's your life.
Mm,
So yeah, that there are a lot of challenging things, but I can say that for one.
mm. So your kid's moving away. Gotcha.
Well, not just moving away, but the feeling of that, even
Mhm.
though that that's what will make them happy.
Right.
So their
That's the right
happiness is
decision.
first.
Right. Self-inflicted wound. Do you have a story about something that's gone wrong in your life that you can't blame anyone else but
Yeah.
yourself?
Well, you can't blame anybody. It's it's gonna have to be finances.
Mm.
So I want to blame it on when I was younger and you don't know
Lack of
too
information. Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I think I still do that even when I was older than that than when I say that. So I think it's like anything else. It just takes practice, and then because you said it's like self-inflicted, right?
Mm.
Um, so I think the same is for other things that's self-inflicted. You don't just get it right the next time around. It's kind of you gotta keep doing it and practicing it.
Yeah. Similar vein. If you could redo one thing, what would you do differently, if anything?
I would to this day I'd probably say just even with having kids, just even though as hard as it may be, even though you have to work, is just I would have wanted to finish college or go to school earlier.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. If you could give your younger self advice, what would it be now? Any age, any time period.
I would probably say to my younger self, just keep going to college. Keep going to school.
Go to school. Mm.
Yeah.
Nice. How do you define success?
Mm. So I would say, from listening to all
Driving
your
a Lamborghini.
no, maybe when I was younger, I would probably say that, but not the first thing. But I do want to say that um, success is when someone is doing what they really want, you know, really want to do. But I also want to add to that is that if I think success is if someone's doing what they want to do and also can um, impact somebody else with that. Um,
It's not
yeah,
just about doing what you want to do, but
yeah.
also like being
Maybe
a net positive in the world.
yes,
Mm,
yes, definitely.
I like it. If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you try or what would you be doing right now?
Um, just one thing.
You can say whatever you want. You have a list.
Well, one of the two things I'd probably have is
Twins, a Lamborghini.
twins, yes, but that's out of my control. That's something
Mhm.
I can't control. Um, well, but you always know that I said that I would want two of you and two of your brother and two of your sister,
Okay, so if
but
you couldn't fail, what would you be doing now or trying or whatever?
fail. Um,
Absolutely couldn't fail.
what I would probably be doing is um probably finish um medical school, being a surgeon, and then being a surgeon for one of those nonprofits like Mercy Ships.
Mm. See, I was just waiting for you to say that because I knew the answer. I was seeing if you're going to say it.
You're
Are-
probably one of the few people, yeah.
If you knew you would absolutely fail anyways, what would you be doing? This guy-
Wait.
the confusion on my mom's face for all the audio listeners. Um, so this is the spirit of the question is like we stop doing things. We don't do things because we're scared of failing. But there are some things in life that even if we fail, we would do anyways. Yeah,
Oh.
that's what I mean.
Well, we do it anyways. I probably have more kids.
So there you go. All right. What is something you've been pondering recently or frequently or deeply? And or do you have any favorite hot take? Something you've been thinking about a lot.
I think maybe because I'm older now. I
29 is not old.
compared to um I think what I've been thinking about lately is something that like when you're gone, not just your legacy or something people will remember you by, but um something that you can pass down that just can keep on going as far as teaching or helping someone, because you can help one person and then it stops there, because when you're gone
Mm.
then it stops there. But if you can teach or have an impact on somebody else who can do that as well, then the world would definitely be a
Mm.
better
So
place.
teach teachers, raise teachers.
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Mm. Do you have a favorite hot take,
Hot
if
take.
anything? A hot take is just basically something that you think maybe most people might not agree with, or mainstream thought might not agree with, but you think is absolutely true. Like, no, I think this is true. Most people probably don't think so. Or you can pass if you don't have anything.
Not anything that comes to mind.
Cool. What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made in either time, money, energy, etc.?
I know I've heard this before, but I didn't think about it.
She's heard this 35 times already, or 34, something like that.
Mm. And then I always wonder when I'm watching it, like, what are they gonna say?
Yeah.
So now all of you are like, what is she gonna say? You know what? I'm sorry, but I can't think of
Mm.
anything.
Not like sending your son to college, or I'm just kidding. Oh, another thing my mom's paid for is my first car. You definitely paid for all of that, so I appreciate that.
But you know what? I mean, you put that card,
Yeah,
to
I had it for
good
12
use.
years. I'm like, get the money's worth out of it. I drive, like, try to get the most out of my car and finances. Okay, favorite recent purchase in the $50 to $100 range recently that has impacted your life the most.
Well, okay, okay. I thought about this, but only when I was listening to all of your podcasts. But I didn't think about it. But something did come to mind. For a long time, I've been looking for. When I was younger, I just was into um, the nice purses and things like that. And now, because I feel like my life become busier, like with animals and work and even like studying. So I've had to, and I've gone through maybe 4 or 5 like purses
Mm.
that that are that would be really functional, and you'd be surprised. After maybe 4 or 5, and I returned some to Amazon because they just didn't fit all the necessary things I want, but I didn't want something too big.
Mm.
So I finally got yeah, and I think it was less than $30. The right size purse,
Uh,
and that I can carry around even with all the things that I'm doing.
mm. Okay, maybe I might ask you to send me that link so I can link it in the show notes.
Oh,
Maybe they want the
okay.
same purse as you. The host's mom has this purse, so she advocates for it. Might as well get that affiliate link. Okay, last rapid fire questions. Favorite books, movies, videos, articles, media, or anything that you recommend or share the most?
Mhm. Um, one book, and I'm still reading it, is called Mountains Beyond Mountains, and it's about uh, his name is Dr. Paul Farmer, and he's a physician from Harvard, and he also has his PhD. But aside from all that, he um, built this hospital in Haiti. But he started as um, and he's had to go through like all the challenges politically and economically,
Mm.
and for building these hospitals, and to the end result is to provide accessible health care for these different countries. Like Haiti is the first one that he did, and I think uh, the next one is like Peru.
Mhm.
So it's a really good book.
So it's like a not biography, but like, or is it, or
Yeah.
he wrote it, but it's about his
S-
journey?
No, somebody
Oh,
else
so
wrote it
about
about
him.
him. Yeah. So
Oh,
he is, and I mentioned this. He's a medical anthropologist.
oh, okay, gotcha. He's still alive, or
He just passed like a
okay,
couple years
okay,
ago.
okay. So it's about him and his work and what he's done.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Cool, nice. I'll link to that. Any other recommendations? Things people should check out?
Um, one of my favorites, because we talked about like challenges with the finances,
Mm.
and I think I heard about this book from you, and it helped me because it's something that anybody can use and anybody can apply it, whether you make $1 million or $30,000 a year, and that's the one by Ramit. Um,
I will teach you to be rich.
yes,
Mm.
and it sounds, don't be deceived by
Yeah,
the title.
the clickbaity title.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we read a lot of books on finances, and I think that's the best
Mm.
book to start with because you can apply it easily, and anybody can, you know, and it really helps.
Yeah, no, I always recommend that when it comes to personal finance, that book is like the number one because it's so practical
Yes.
and it's solid advice. It's not gimmicky, it's not
Hmm.
quick fix or quick like fast
Yep.
money. It's solid principles that you just do this for the next 10, 20 years, you'll be fine. Highly recommend it. I'll link that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that is it for rapid fire. Now we'll go to ending questions. So we always end with gratitude. Shout out to my mother wherever she may be right now, maybe 2 feet away from me. But mom, what are you grateful for?
Well, I'm grateful for my kids. I will say that,
So unexpected.
and that's the truth.
Mm,
And then for my health, um, because if you don't have that, and I think people take that for granted
mm,
too. So I think I always say that when people are complaining, like
yeah,
you have your
your
health,
health.
yeah, and
And if your family's healthy, you're healthy. That's like honestly baseline, right?
yes, yeah.
Which child are you most grateful for?
I already said my answer.
If it's
There are no. I have no
if
favorites.
it's
That's
me, if
that's
it's
the
me,
truth.
continue to breathe. Okay, cool. Nice. Perfect. We got it on camera. Okay, I will throw in my
This is unexpected because he didn't tell me this.
obviously it's my show. I can do whatever I want.
That's true.
Okay, I'll throw in mine. Great gratitude. I'm also grateful, obviously, for my parents as well. This question, this piece is inspired by my mom. Obviously, one of the biggest things she's given me is the attitude of gratitude. Yeah, everyone around me, my health as well. Yeah, and just being able to see my family, I think that's a big thing. Cause yeah, like you said, a lot of my gratitude comes from my mom and like her perspective. So I think yeah, values align there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Final ask from the audience or final takeaways you'd like them to have?
I think that's
Listen
one
to
of the
1,000 Gurus.
I think that's one of the biggest things is that gratitude,
Mm,
and I'm
be
also
grateful.
grateful for my parents, and thank you for. I was really excited when you mentioned this to me. So I'm always you know watching your podcast and
Mm,
watching the people on there. So I was
yeah.
really excited when you
We,
mentioned
you're
it to me.
my number one fan and supporter, so of
I
course you get
am.
that. Yeah, no,
I am.
definitively. Like that's not even there's not even a top 10. It's just my mom.
Yes.
Which I appreciate. So yeah, I think that's it. Where we can find you, I'll link your socials. I don't know if you care if people reach out to you, but if they just want to check out what you're up to, I'll link my mom's Instagram. It's right there. I think it's private, right? Um,
I think
or is
it's
it public?
public. I
Okay,
think
yeah,
it's
then go ahead
public.
and feel free to spam my mom with whatever you want. It'll be there. Cool. All right. So, well, that is the end, mom. Mom, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you
I'm
for
glad it
having
worked
me.
out. Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know what else to say. I mean, thank you for the birth. Every one of my birthdays is a birth anniversary of my mom giving birth, so I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a pretty good gift, so I appreciate it. All right. Thank you guys. So I'll do my final sign off. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Remember to subscribe, follow, like, comments, leave my mom some love in the comments below, wherever you're seeing this. And let me know too if you like this episode, what you want to see more of, feedback. We love feedback. And a reminder to always be kind to other people, especially yourself. And a reminder that you can always learn something from someone if you take the time to listen. So thanks for being here.